Hello, and welcome to The Art of a Well-Lived Life, a podcast hosted by me, Katie Hauser. This podcast is inspired by my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Gladys McGarry, who she and I shared for 3.5 years an Instagram Live where we discussed mostly everything she wanted to. And she had written a book and published it, and it became a New York bestseller. And so I decided to continue those conversations. In the last 2 years of her life, she was on about 200 podcasts. So I decided that I would start by interviewing people that had her on their podcast. So today's episode is with Sam Baker. Sam Baker has a podcast called The Shift. And it's a podcast that aims to tell the no holds barred conversations with women over 40, which is super cool. And definitely check out her podcast. She was also editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan and editor of several other magazines. And then she also just wrote a book called The Shift. And I think maybe it might be coming out as a movie. So we'll discuss that in this episode. So I hope you join me. Um, I look forward to speaking with Sam and sharing it with you. Oops. Well, hello and welcome to the Art of a Well-Lived pod. Jesus. Welcome to the Art of a Well-Lived Life. And I'm not editing. I don't have the skills to edit, so it is what it is, and I'm good with that. So welcome, Sam
Okay.
Baker. I really, really appreciate you being on with me. And I did a little preview before you got on about all of your accolades and who you are and what you do. Um, and I just want to start by saying, you had this amazing interview with Dr. Gladys. And so tell me how that was for you.
Oh, do you know what? I just, as prep for this, I just re-listened to it and it reminded me all over again what a fantastic person she was. I mean, I remember that I saw a piece. I mean, I hadn't even heard about the book, and I saw a piece in one of the British newspapers, about living to 103,
Right.
102, as she was at the time. And I just thought, oh my God, I've got to have this woman on the shift. But so I called in the book and I asked if she would come on. And she was a busy lady, but she fitted
Holy
me in.
cow. The last 2 years of her life, she was on 200 podcasts.
I'm not at all surprised.
Yeah.
I remember her saying to me, I made some notes and I can't find it, but I remember her saying to me, got a lot to do.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to get up and get on with it. She was talking about somebody just going through the motions in the later years of their life. And she was like, I can't do that. I'm busy. I've got stuff I need to do. And I just thought, oh my God, you've got more energy than people I've interviewed who are like half your age.
Mm-hmm.
She was incredible. And I mean, anybody who listens to the Shift podcast a lot will probably say, oh, you say that a lot. And I do say that. I do often say, oh, this woman is amazing because people are amazing in
Yeah.
different ways. But
Right.
I honestly think if I had to pick one, I have a question I always ask at the end when I ask people who are their old broad role models. And I think Gladys has to be Gladys. Amazing woman.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I feel so fortunate that I reconnected with her and we were able to do an Instagram Live for 3.5 years. And it was the last. I talk about her as she was like this comet that in the end of her life just came through the atmosphere and was just shining so brightly and just kept going until flamed out. She just decided, you know what? I'm tired and my next adventure is dying. And she really made the proclamation, and a week later she died. So,
Wow,
yeah,
really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, she kept going until the very end, and then she just was too tired. So,
So how did you know her? How did you meet her?
I grew up down the street from her family. So in Scottsdale,
Wow.
Arizona, and one of my older sisters was best friends with her youngest daughter. And so I was the youngest of all the kids. She had six and we had three, and I was the youngest. So I wasn't really around their house as much as my two older sisters, but I knew who they were and they were kind of cool and they always had funky stuff going on at their house. And, I do remember going in there a few times and seeing her, and she just always looked as beautiful as she does with her hair up in the crown, and like it was amazing. So I had read, which book was it? Born to Heal, that her daughter Analia had written about her life. And I read it twice, and the second time I read it, I just was so much more I felt like I was in the same place. It was after I had gotten a divorce and she had gotten a divorce, and and I had worked with my ex-husband, and we're both chiropractors, and she was, so I just felt like, oh my gosh, I need to reach out and just have a conversation with her. And so I did. And, I was like, do you remember me? And she was like, of course I remember you. And so anyway, we just started that way. And then I had this, like, I don't, do you know who Zach Bush is, Dr. Zach Bush?
No, no.
Anyway, he's sort of back in the 2020, he was up and coming and a really cool holistic medical doctor, which really outside the box thinker. And I had been following him, and I was like, I need to introduce these two because he really revered the feminine and the matriarchal and how we've lost that in medicine. And I was like, he needs to know her. And through social media, I managed to work that out because I didn't know him. And so I got them together on a Zoom call to introduce them. And then the next day, they did an Instagram live. And it was just so funny because she only had like, you know, she didn't have an Instagram page, first of all. So they had to create one. And because she was 100 at that point. And I know. And so she had like six followers, me and her family and stuff.
Yeah, they
And
were all
after,
family. Yeah.
yeah, and after that interview, she ended up with 800 followers. And so
Just like that.
I
Yeah.
just I called her the next day and I said, people liked what you had to say. Would you like to go on Instagram Live? You and I will just do it. And I really didn't know what kind of energy she had. I had no idea she was in the pre-stages of writing a book and any of that. And so I said, we'll just go as long as you want. The minute you're done, we'll be done, even if it was, whatever. And we never stopped. She just kept saying, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I was like, all right. So every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern, she and I would get on and talk about whatever she wanted to talk about. So I just feel, so privileged to have spent that time with her.
Yeah, I mean that it doesn't surprise me at all because I know when she came on the shift, I thought, oh well, she's, 102 with the best will in the world, she's going to have a finite amount of energy. So I had probably, I tend not to follow an interview plan because I just like to go where the conversation goes. But I thought, well, I might have to just prepare for it being only half an hour. Like an
Right.
hour later, I was like, I really think you maybe need to have a rest now. It's like,
And she actually did. I mean, her son John, who was living with her at the time, he really had to navigate that for her because there were so many podcasts that were wanting her that they ended up having to cut it back to one a day. She was doing two a day, but it was
oh
just
gosh.
too much. It was just too much. And yeah, it was really interesting to watch that whole piece about when her book came out and even when she was writing it. Yeah, the whole thing was just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm so curious about you and your journey of being an editor and then shifting, no pun intended, and realizing that, women's voices over 40 just weren't being heard. And so how did that go for you? It was just like all of a sudden you decided like, "Ooh, this is such a cool thing. I need to do this."
Well, I do feel like I'm much less interesting than Dr. Gladys, I have to say. I think, do you know what? Remember thinking about this, and I think that actually what I did with the shift was really what I had been doing my entire career. And I think the good, back when magazines used to be a thing,
Mm-hmm.
the good magazine editors were very, the skill is really to work out what people need. It's not like I just want to flick through and look at very expensive fashion ads. It's like,
Right.
what is going to make the reader want to buy this, to feel part of this, and to belong? And so throughout my career, I mean, I edited Just 17, which was obviously aimed at teenagers, Company, which is aimed at late teens, early 20s, then Cosmo, which kind of goes the gamut, and then Red, which was like a 30 something magazine. And so at each stage, it's like, what are the needs in those women's lives? What are they not? What will they get from this? Why would they give us their money? Basically,
Right.
why would they be
Right.
buying this magazine every month? And so then magazines kind of died, more or less. I mean, there's still a few, but they're not in very much evidence anymore. Um, and also, I was aging too, and I had noticed as a editor of around about 40 that all of a sudden there was nobody older than me. Where had they all gone? They suddenly vanished.
Yeah.
So, I had a pretty hard perimenopause, not premature, sorry, Freudian slip, perimenopause. Um, and when I came through the other side, I just thought, okay, I was a magazine editor with access to a health editor. Most women are not in my situation, and I didn't know what on earth was going on. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
was happening to me. Um, I just knew that I felt terrible and I lost all my confidence and, all those sorts of things alongside hot flushes. But also by that point, I was aware that my generation of magazine editors were starting to vanish as well. So I thought, well, okay, all of these women have been buying the magazines that we made, and we've been talking to them on social media because social media had grown up
Mm-hmm.
in that time. Um, are they buying magazines? What are they doing? Where have they gone? So, that's where the shift came from. I thought, well, I wrote a book called The Shift, and to support that, I thought, well, I'll just launch a podcast. We'll do it just to promote the book, and we'll do 6 episodes. And the only criteria will be that the women I speak to have to be over 40. They can be anybody, because I firmly believe that anyone is interesting. You know, everyone is
As are
interesting if you
you
just
and
ask them.
amazing, like you just said. So just,
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, but let's just accept that Dr. Gladys was,
okay. Yeah.
let's put her
Over
on the
there.
plinth where she belongs.
Okay.
But I just think anyone is interesting. So I picked 6 women who were like a little bit known, but not like superstars or anything. And I just said, I want you to buy. The only criteria is that you have to not be afraid to talk about your age. So it ruled a couple of people out because they said, oh, my agent will kill me if I admit to being over 40.
Yeah.
And one person who came on got into trouble with her manager for talking about menopause.
Oh
It's
my
like, I can't,
God.
why did you do that? And things have changed so much in
Yeah.
the 5 years since then. And it was so interesting because the podcast just took off immediately. And I was swamped with women on social media going, thank goodness. Suddenly, somebody is talking about the things that concern me.
Right.
So I made more episodes and more episodes, and then I started a newsletter, and it just, who knew? It turns out that women wanted to hear from other women having a shared experience.
Exactly. And how beautiful for you to create that space and safety for people, for women to do that. Like that is, and I was just listening to the Dr. Gladys episode with you and, her talking about not finding her voice until she was 93.
And I've
And
actually written that down.
yeah.
Amazing.
And even though she was speaking and she was on platforms all over the place, she needed the validation of everyone and probably mostly her husband would be my guess,
Mm,
ex-husband, um, to validate that her words were worthy or, whatever. And so I just think it's such a beautiful gift for you to give to women to be able to come on and share their experience and then have that experience heard and have people be so grateful because there is that community there that we need to share those stories that aren't being told and they're not being shown in media or social media for that matter or movies and all the places where people
mm.
see women.
Yeah, I mean, thing about Dr. The things that Dr. Gladys said, which I know that she will have said variations on things on many of the other podcasts that
Right.
she's been on. But I think for my listeners who are actually, it's not just women over 40. I have a lot of listeners in their 30s who are just very interested to hear from older women. And in fact, I am, some of my favorite conversations are with the women who are much older than me,
Mm,
into their 80s, and obviously Dr. Gladys. But the fact that, she lived in a way, it was the second half of her life where, not to say she hadn't done a huge amount in the first half of her life, she has 6 children and
yeah.
done an incredible business with her husband, but it was only actually when she got divorced, like she said to me, that she wrote to him and said, thank you for giving her her freedom,
Right.
which was not his intention at all. Obviously, he wasn't thinking about her when
Right.
he did that. Um, so, I think she was so inspiring for the listeners, really finding her feet in her 70s. And then, like you say, finding her voice at 90. I mean, it's just never, well, her whole aging into health thing.
Right.
It's so like, you don't drag yourself through the aging process. Like we were saying earlier, she had loads to do and she still had time to do it. And there's not like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and drum my fingers you know,
Which is so
until my
sad
time's
because
up.
that is just so many the way it goes for so many people, not just women. Um, and you guys also talked about her idea or the way she called it, your juice. And
Oh, yes.
that finding your juice, finding your purpose, and that's truly what kept her fire lit was that she had this mission, basically. She wanted to get those words out and she came up with the succinct way to do it. And so that was really her driving force. But it seems like for you, this is your juice, is having this platform for women to talk.
Yes, actually. It's interesting that you say that. I mean, I love the conversations that I have. Every week I will probably record a couple of episodes a week, and then I might have a few weeks where I'm doing something else. But those conversations are an immense privilege. And then I quite often take something that one of the guests will have said will spark something in the back of my head. And I'll mull it over and then I'll write about it. I send out a newsletter every Thursday. And sometimes those newsletters, they just, people read them and, life just goes on. And then another time I'll write something and there will be an avalanche, an inpouring of people
Mm,
saying, Yes, I've been feeling like that. And I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I was allowed to say it out loud, or I didn't quite know that I was feeling that. But the minute I read it, and that, yeah, I get such a massive, um, what's the word? I don't want to say high, buzz, feeling of validation. I mean, all of those words really from women messaging me and saying, yeah, I feel exactly like that. And this is what I've done, or I don't know what to do, or, just whatever their response is. It doesn't matter whether their response is like, I can add to this or help.
Right.
It's just knowing that you've struck a chord of what is making women's lives difficult or interesting or resonating with them right now, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's, one of my friends who is an astrologer, she always talks about it like you're in your lane. You've found
Yeah.
your lane, you found your river, you found your current, and you're in that lane. And so the people that are drawn to you, regardless, like you said, of what the comments are, whether it's, oh my God, that resonated with me, or oh my God, I needed to hear that, I'm having a rough day, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just your voice and your sharing and your ability to create that space for people to share is helping thousands and thousands of women just have the experience of communal living with women, which is so important. So important.
And you used the word safe space earlier, and I think it's that as well, because whilst the internet has, it's given us the capacity to build a community with people we wouldn't have otherwise met, it's also, there are also hazards for
Yeah,
women, for young people, for people of color, for,
yeah,
all sorts of people. And those people will find you wherever you are if they want to put their mind to it. But the fact that you can create a space where people feel like, um, that they feel safe to put up their hands and say, yes, I want to separate from my husband, or, you know, my husband's left me, I feel like my life is over, or I'm menopausal and I hate my body, or anything, or, I'm worried about my teenage children, or
yeah,
whatever it is. It can be literally anything. But the fact that they feel safe to write that, I think is a massive, that feels to me like a massive thing, because so much of the internet doesn't feel safe.
right. And in that, not just the writing in, but you're creating the space for people to have that conversation with you live that you are
Yeah.
broadcasting, and so women
Yes. Yeah.
are able to say to you, yes, I'm devastated. Yes, I hate my body, like whatever, whatever it is. And that's such a gift. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing that you are offering for women. And so I
Oh,
was
well, thank
also
you.
looking up all of your stuff this morning, and so
Oh, Lord.
I know. So are they making a movie out of your book?
Oh, well, it's early days. It has there's a lot of it. I've got a new book which is currently being sold. It hasn't got published yet, but it's in the process of being sold. And it's yeah, it is currently with film and TV agents, and there's a lot of interest. So fingers crossed, we don't want to
Okay.
jinx it. But it's about, the way that so many women have in midlife and beyond talk about feeling invisible to a lesser or greater degree. Um, and I kind of wanted to write about, well, what would happen if that literally happened? And there have been so many iterations of the Invisible Man, the H.G. Wells classic.
Right.
And so I just thought, well, what happens if I rewrite that from the point of view of a middle-aged woman? Because I've never seen that done, and it definitely hasn't been on TV.
Right.
Um, yeah, and here we are. So we'll see. We'll see. It's very early
So
days. I don't want to jinx
exciting.
it.
Yeah, that is so exciting. And so just sort of riffing off of that and going back to Gladys for a moment, um, I did an interview with Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you know who that is, but she's an amazing woman who teaches how do I even, she was a medical intuitive. She became a medical intuitive and she's a spiritual teacher. Really brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Um, and so she and Gladys had shared many a stage back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s. And and she was actually Gladys's very last interview. And so I thought, ooh,
Ah,
let me have her come on and so I
yeah.
had her on as the first interview. And she was talking about being at an event that was a yearly event that she would always go to, and Gladys and her ex-husband would also go to. It would be all of these different medical people. And she said the year, I don't know if it was the year, the next year after they got a divorce, and they both showed up. He showed up, and he showed up with his new wife, which was
Mm.
the office manager of the office that they shared together,
Oh,
right?
oh
And so she
man.
said, Gladys was an absolute queen. And she just kept her head held high. And she walked in and she said, she literally looked like a queen. She always had her hair up in the crown. And she said, and she wore this blue chiffon dress. I'll never forget it. And she just walked in like she just owned the place in this most humble elegance that she had. So when you talk about, the disappearing woman, um, here is a woman that did not disappear and she just kept showing up in her brilliance. And so I think, if we can inspire women to keep showing up in their brilliance as flawed as whatever it is, we're all part of that fabric of life that makes it all happen. And
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like it's people like Gladys who, you know, absolutely refuse to pay any heed to that message that society gives us that we're kind of not very useful anymore, once we get to that point. You know, and the thing as well about Gladys is quite because quite often the women that we do see, they've got this fake Hollywood perfection. It's like, okay, you're allowed to still be on our screens in your 60s, but only if you don't look like you are. And, the message that you got from Gladys was just like, here I am. I really am living my best life. I am very busy. I've got a lot to do. I've learned to live through. I mean, that's one of the things that I really took from what she said to me when she came on. You don't need to get over things. You live through them and you learn from them. And I think there's so much focus on recovering from, getting over, getting better, and not
right,
learning. And, each of those things that happen to us, no matter how, whether you want to, like Gladys, pull over on the motorway and
right,
scream the place down, when you find out that your husband actually has left you for the office manager, that those things are all a part of you. And I think that was a lesson that I really took from her is that she, she didn't dismiss all of the things that had gone before. Everything she'd done with her husband was still an achievement, still important. She still had her six great kids and her reputation and all the work that they had done. But now she was using that to build on. It wasn't like I need either to shuffle off and hide or to dismiss all of that and start again. It was like, no, you know, that's my work.
right.
And this is my next stage. This is where I'm getting my juice from this stage. And I think that lesson, for me, I've never forgotten it, but I know as well that the listeners were like, yes, I say a lot. This is the next stage of my life, the second shift, or whatever, however you want to describe it. But here's Gladys, the living proof of that. You know, my favorite thing, the very favorite thing that she said to me was that, how's your weird?
Yeah, I love
And I have,
that. Yeah.
absolutely have stolen that because I think that's so about just embracing who you are, whatever age you are, whatever background you're from. No, she's a legend. The woman was a
What
legend.
nationality was it that is their greeting? I'm forgetting now.
Oh gosh.
It was like Scandinavian or
It
something, I
was a
thought.
Scandinavian
Yeah.
one. It sounds very Scandinavian, I have to
Yeah.
say. I can't remember either, but I have just listened to her tell me and it's already gone out of my head.
Yeah. It's so funny. It was so good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and
good.
the thing, and maybe she talked about this on with you, but it wasn't, I don't know, I don't remember the age she was at when she finally had this moment of, she said that her ex-husband gave her her freedom, right?
70, I think.
But then, I mean, yeah, they were divorced at 70, but it wasn't until later that she really came to grips with it all and kind of made peace with him, and so felt like when she was writing the book that he was helping her, that
Wow.
he was really there spiritually behind her, energetically helping her, because they had written books together and he had written a bunch of books. And so she really had this kind of full circle moment. And even, and not to take away from her, but she just felt like he was there supporting her, which was a pretty cool place to get to, I think. Uh, and not still hanging on to any ounce of resentment. I don't think she did. And I think that's also part of that aging into health is letting go that of what doesn't serve us. Like, being angry and resentful, that is not going to be fueling your juice ever.
It it's there's that I can't remember who said it now. It's been attributed to a lot of people, but that quote isn't there about how resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's that, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like you can carry that around with you, but the only person that is hurting is you.
Right. Oh, amazing. Amazing. So, what was the other question? And you posted something really interesting today. You posted about Nicole Kidman, which then I had to go look
Oh,
down and read that whole article about her and getting a divorce and the whole thing. And
mm,
talk about somebody who's having to go through all of this tragedy, but there was the piece about her still at the end of the article. It was about her still having to show up in that perfect way to still be a movie
mm.
star, and and how unfortunate.
I think that what struck me about that, the kind of the Nicole Kidman, Keith Urban divorce announcement is how quick the internet was to find a way to blame her.
Mm,
So here is a man who is allegedly having a relationship with a much younger woman.
right.
Let's just leave unsaid what a cliche that will be if it's true.
Yeah.
Um, and all of the pieces that I read were about the fact that, well, Nicole was always working. And I just thought we are so quick to blame and shame, to seek to put the blame on one party or another
Right.
without knowing anything about it. But the not even remotely unspoken was like, well, Nicole has worked so hard to, to keep her visibility and keep her career is so important to her. And look what's happened.
Right.
And I felt like, here we go again, you know, here we go again. And I just think, I mean, as I said earlier, I do it. I have so much respect for those actresses like Nicole Kidman and Demi Moore and Viola Davis, Reese Witherspoon, who have refuse to be cast as grandmothers because they're 35,
Right.
who have started to make the parts that they want to play, to be the inspiration that they want to see. But I also think I know from a lot of what a lot of women say to me, on the shift on the Substack, that they also feel like in order to carry on achieving, they have to, which goes back to what we were saying, they have to look 35.
Hmm.
They have to not look their age. And so I think for me, that piece about Nicole Kidman, I liked it because also it was standing up for her and saying, she's just doing everything right. She's working really hard, she's showing up to all these concerts, all of that. And then still she turns around and the bottom's pulled out of her. And then she is used as I'm not going to be able to think of the phrase. This is brain fog, you see. As a salutary tale, like, look what happens if you
Hmm.
work too hard. You spend too many, So it's not like, wow, this woman is the hardest working woman in Hollywood. It's like, look what happens if you're the hardest working woman in Hollywood. And I
Right.
just, I just feel like it's very lose-lose. It felt very lose-lose. Um, and I suppose what I seek to do with the podcast is to have such a wide range of women on from kind of 39 to 103. I'm yet to exceed Gladys's. Gladys still holds the crown for the oldest guest. Um, I say there are all these different ways of doing it.
Right.
There are all that, juice takes different forms for
Absolutely.
everybody, and another one of Gladys's phrases that I absolutely love, which was spending your energy wildly.
Right. Right.
That is different for everybody. And it might, and you know, if you, what works for you or what works in the industry you work in is that you have some Botox and you take some Manjaro and if that works for you and it's what you want and it does the job, then fine. But also, you can be 90 and you can find your voice. And there are all these different paths in between. And maybe Gladys was the most extreme
Right.
just by virtue of her being so dynamic at
Right.
103. And it also, but she was also never saying you have to still be going at 103. You have to be jumping out of your birthday cake at
Right.
90.
Right.
She
Right.
wasn't
Right.
saying do what I do. She was just saying
This is
find
what I'm
your
doing.
juice.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I'm
Right.
doing.
Right. Yeah. So I totally agree, and I feel like that part about do whatever you want if it makes you feel better to Botox and injection, whatever. The part I have a hard time with is somebody feeling less than if they don't.
Oh, I
you
totally
know, and
agree.
and really trying to help women see that they can be beautiful and wrinkly like Gladys. Like I look at her and I just think, okay, I'm 63. I have 30 more years ahead of me. Like, what am I going to do with, no, what am I saying? 30, 40, I can't even count.
Yeah.
40 more years ahead of me. Like, you're right. Like, the whole second half of my life. Like, yeah, it's so exciting to think about. And it reminded me when you were just speaking, somebody that I love, following her and seeing what she's doing is Jane Fonda. I
Yeah.
mean, what an amazing woman. And that she's still out there because she wants to leave a legacy. Whether you agree with her policies or not, it doesn't matter. It's just that she's found her juice and she is out there. Not only is she still acting, but she's being super political and standing up for what she feels is so right and how she can help, save the planet. And I've heard her in interviews talking about she wished she had never done all the plastic surgery that she's had done.
Mm,
But she bought into that feeling less than in the era that she was growing up in. And, had she to do it over again, she probably wouldn't have done all those things. But that was just that time of growing up in Hollywood and being from a famous act, all of the things. So
Mm.
I do find her very inspiring and sort of that wild, wild westish, because she's out there just doing her thing and she doesn't care. And, standing up to Trump and like all of it. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do feel like, I mean, I wrote a piece last week about how the kind of mainstreamification, if you like, of Manjaro and Ozempic use, not for the people who really need it, but for the people who think that they should lose a stone.
yeah,
And that noise, you know, and I mean, honestly, have a look at the comments on the Substack. It is, I mean, it's incredible. The
mm,
number of women and everybody knows, and just as I was saying, I do, everybody knows that, it's not the be all or end all whether they're a stone overweight. It doesn't matter, but it's what you were saying about the Botox. It's like when things become normalized, then you start to, be considered less than if you don't, or you can't afford to, or you don't want to,
right.
whatever. But the reality is that if you think about it, someone said to you, do you want to erase the life from your face? No. Do you want to erase the evidence of the things that you have done, the person that you are, because that's what it is. And I think if we maybe thought of it more like that, rather than do
Hmm. Hmm.
you want to look like a 30-year-old? But also, well, society considers 30-year-olds women attractive and older women not. I mean, like you say, I would rather look at, I'm trying to think of an older actress who hasn't had a lot of work though, Judi Dench or
Oh,
Lauren
beautiful.
Hutton, or,
Beautiful. Judi Dench with all her wrinkles when she smiles, she's the best.
yes. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, as you've just said, Jane Fonda would say she knows she doesn't look like that.
Yeah. 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 Oh, and I think also, again, going back to Gladys and, any woman, well, any women and men, growing up in the patriarchal society that we have.
Mm.
Oh God. I mean, that's a
Yeah, we'll
big
be here all day.
yeah, yeah, right. I mean, it's such a big conversation and but again, going back to Gladys and having been in medical school when she was in the 40s, and there were only 25, no, there were 50 women in her medical class and only 25 graduated. And I just loved, and I was hearing this again on your podcast with her, that they sent her to the psychiatrist twice to try and get her in check because she was just not really following the rules of what a
Mhm.
woman in medicine should be. But they also told them at the very beginning, you need to be smarter than the men, you need to be tougher
Mm,
than the men, and work harder than the men. Just to,
yeah.
oh, so
It-
disgusting.
It's the whole you've got to do it backwards in high heels thing, isn't it?
Right.
And
And so I don't know if you ever heard this story, but when she was in her internship in a hospital in Chicago, maybe, and she had the early morning shift and she was pregnant. So whether it was with her first, it might have been her first. And so she was doing surgery and she had this just horrible shift and the men didn't really want her there to begin with. Not only was she a woman, but she was a pregnant woman, for God's
mm,
sakes, right? So this would have been in the 50s, early 50s, probably. And so they specifically gave her like the worst shift so that she was getting no sleep. She was hardly eating because it was like really early in the morning. I can't remember what the exact details of it were, but it was just so horrible. And she was like, well, I'm not going to let them get the best of me. I am going to just do this thing. I mean, she had this tenacity that was like, fuck them. I am not letting them get to me. And so this angel of a woman who was like the janitor, and there was the big chalkboard that had the schedule of who was on shift when. Well, in the middle of the night, this janitor would go and erase switch names so that she could come in later and get more sleep and have breakfast before she had to be on her shift. And she did not know how this miraculous thing happened until she saw this woman one night. Maybe she was doing an overnight or something and woke up and saw this woman erasing and switching the names. And, it was so beautiful. It's like, oh, there you go, women looking out for women, and this woman who was a janitor, not a doctor, who still was in support of, like, you go, you stand up for the woman, like, yeah, amazing.
Oh,
So
that's
great.
brilliant, isn't it? And I think it's so easy for us to forget, that at the point that she was going to medical school, training, having 6 children while
Children.
working, people weren't doing that.
No,
Women were not doing that then.
no. Yeah. So just, yeah, what a gift to humanity to, um, it was so funny too, because last week she died on September 28th of last year. And so it's just been a year, and I was in San Francisco. I'm in Connecticut. I was in San Francisco visiting my daughter. And we were, going to the farmer's market and walking through the streets of San Francisco. And I said, hey, today is the day. It's 1 year ago that Gladys died. So let's just keep her in our hearts and, like have a Gladys moment. And so she was like, oh, yeah, of course. And so we're walking down the street. I mean, I haven't even told her son yet. I'll tell him tomorrow when we go on Instagram Live. So we're walking down the street. And all of a sudden, there's this old woman who's walking with two canes, and we're walking down the street, and she's crossing the sidewalk to get into a cab. And she's got her two canes, and she's a little bit hunched over. She freaking had her hair in the exact way that
That's
Gladys,
well,
although it was white hair and it was all the way up in a crown, and it was clipped into the crown with those black plastic
yeah, kind of. Oh, yeah, I
things
know the
that
ones.
hold your
Yeah.
hair back. I don't know what you call them. But so it was this black crown that went around her hair, and her hair was up in the middle of it. And we both stopped and looked, and I was like, thanks, Gladys. Like, have you ever
Oh,
seen anybody wear their hair like that? Never.
no, never. Like what that we call like a cottage bun,
Yeah. Like
almost. Yeah, like a.
it was just, I was like, okay, thank you for showing me that you're around and you're here, and what a gift. Yeah, it was great.
Is her work being carried on?
Well, yes, her work is being carried on. So they just had a big fundraiser to continue. They're doing a documentary about her life, and they're still trying to raise the funds for the Village for Living Medicine, which she had hoped to see, be built before she died. But it has plans to be a physical location where a multitude of practitioners practice. There's a place for seniors to live. There's a nursery for young people, so to bring them together, like a daycare, and a birthing center, and all of it. So yeah, they are absolutely doing that. And so this for me was part of why I wanted to do this podcast. Was like, she didn't give me this for no reason. She wasn't in my life for no reason. So somehow I have to do my part to carry her voice forward in whatever, however my juice finds its way, right? Whatever riverlet that comes off of whatever stream comes off of her river, um, to just let that expand and see where that goes. So that was my hope and plan for doing this podcast. And again, like you said, I'll do six and we'll see where it goes. And like with
Yeah.
Gladys and our Instagram live, I was like, maybe we'll do a month. We'll see where it goes. And we kept going. So who knows? But I'm, just excited to, like you said, have these really interesting conversations with people that I wouldn't know you, like I wouldn't have a
No,
conversation
exactly.
with you. And so, what a great thing. I mean, that's sort of my juice. I love having deep and interesting and heartfelt conversations with people. That makes my heart swell. So, yay. So,
The
thank
it's
you.
You're very welcome. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because so often the women I talk to are talking about learning to say no, and I definitely think that is a thing for a lot of women.
For
But
sure.
another thing, and definitely a thing for me, is learning to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody says, like when you contact me, do you want to come and talk to me about, like, yeah, why not? Why
Right.
not?
And at first you were like, I don't know, do I? Like, what do I have to say? But it's, but we all are a thread in the tapestry. So we all have a voice. We all have something to say. And I'm, I'm doing my best to own that for myself as well. Like I did the preamble for the first podcast that I did with Carolyn Mace. It was so bad, like
I'm
so
sure it
bad.
wasn't.
No, it
I'm
was.
sure
I
it
was
wasn't.
reading it and it was so bad. And I was like, I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. And I'm not editing it because I don't know how to edit right now. So I'm not
Yeah.
doing it. So and even before you and I got on, I was like nervous and I was like, oh God, and sometimes you just have to do those things that make you nervous and it's a little uncomfortable and then it gets better and you get to have great conversations with someone you've never met before. So, yeah, it's great. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate you stepping forward, saying yes. And before I tell people, or you're going to tell people where to find you, my last weird question for you, because you posted it on your Substack or wherever I read it, was you said you have a cat named Sausage. Long story.
I do have a cat named Sausage, and he's not here actually. He normally likes to put in an entrance whenever he thinks that I might be on a camera.
Hmm.
He is called Sausage because he is a rescue cat, and I wouldn't say he has no tail, but his tail is about
Okay.
yay big.
A little
So
nubbin.
it's a little nubbin. It's a little, I think. Probably he was shaved off because he had an accident, it probably looked like a little chipolata or a little Chinese mushroom, the kind of
Oh
about
my
that
God.
big.
Okay.
So we don't know. So we got him from a rescue centre, the RSPCA, in the UK, and he had had a run-in with a van or a lorry or something, and his pelvis has been crushed
Oh,
and his tail broken, and they weren't able to save his tail, hence the nubbin.
yep.
And his pelvis had to be rebuilt, and he's still a little bit wonky. But so we don't know whether he was called Sausage because when he'd been shaved, his tail looked like a little sausage, or whether it was the nurses going, "Oh, poor sausage," you
Oh,
know.
so
But
his
when we
name,
got
you didn't name him. He was already
We
named
didn't name
Sauce.
him Sausage.
Okay.
He was already named Sausage, and we figured that was probably already his second name in his life,
Right.
because presumably whoever his owner had been who'd abandoned him had called him something else.
Right.
So I don't think if you adopted a child, I hope that you wouldn't just keep randomly changing its name. And so I don't think that you should do that to cats and dogs either. So
Uh,
we stuck with Sausage. And it's actually fascinating how many people you meet who have pets named after food groups.
that is so funny. I love it. Well,
But it's quite funny when you're standing out on the back step calling him. So you're
yeah.
standing out there going, sausage, food, sausage.
Come here, sausage.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so how do people find you if they want to hear more about you, and where can we find your podcast?
You can find my podcast. It's The Shift with Sam Baker, and you can find it, as they say, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes.
So all the usual places,
Okay.
Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, everywhere,
Okay.
basically. But if you search The Shift with Sam Baker, you search The Shift, it will come up eventually, but there are a few podcasts called The Shift. It's the orange one with me with my big, it's a drawing of me with my big hair. Or search Dr. Gladys The Shift, actually, and that will bring it up.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then there's also a Substack, which is the shift with sambaker.substack.com. And there are 20,000 people, 20,000, not just women. So if you're a man listening and you want to join in, you're very welcome. But there are 20,000 people having a chat about just whatever
Oh, that's
takes
awesome.
their fancy.
That is
So
awesome.
yeah, and you
Well,
can subscribe free,
thank you so much. What a pleasure. What a pleasure to have
Oh,
a
thank you for
conversation with you.
asking me. And
Yeah.
when you did ask me, I did say, because the title of the podcast is The Art of Living Well, and I was like, I don't know that I know very much about living well, but I'm learning. And Dr. Gladys absolutely contributed to that learning. So thank you very much for asking me.
But again, I'm just, okay, it's hard to stop the conversation. But again, so the
Can we
question I
keep going?
also was going to ask you is, well, what is your art of living well? And her whole idea, again, we go back to the juice. Well, I think you're
Mm.
living your art, by having the Shift podcast, by opening yourself up to all of these conversations that you're having with women that, of course, you're learning from, and of course, you're sharing, like, so I think for me, it feels like the art of a well-lived life is how are you living your art? How are you living your juice? How is that running through you? Because that's the thing that is going to create the light of you. Doesn't get much better than that.
No, that's true. I'll take that. It's
Okay.
definitely opening up to those conversations
Yeah.
every day.
Yay. Okay, well, great.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure. And we will talk again. We will talk again.
We will. And it looks very sunny in Connecticut. And let me tell you, it is not very sunny in Scotland.
Oh, it is very sunny. We're having October heat, that sort of last few days where it's hot. I live right on the water on Long Island Sound, so I've been out swimming.
Oh,
I'm gonna go out swimming in a couple of hours because the water's still, you can still swim it. So I'm
oh,
soaking it in.
I'm very jealous. Well, thank you for having me. I've loved talking to you.
Thank you too. All right, you have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.